Okay, I want to talk about closure. And I want to talk about how you can actually get closure, but not from the person you want it from. You could all, especially if you end like a bad relationship, you will never get closure from that person. It has to come from within. I did a video about this the other day, and that's what this comment is responding to, because I want to talk about the ways I actually got closure, but that meant literally never talking to that person again. Okay, and what I mentioned in the video before, if you haven't seen it, is that one of the things that if you go to any like domestic violence support group or whatever, narcissist support group, the one thing that all survivors have in common is this desperate need, not even for an apology. That would be great. That's a little cherry on top of the narcissist sundae, is an apology, but you're not going to get it. And if you do get it, it's not going to be sincere. It's going to be manipulation, or like too little too late, or usually just like wanting access to you again. Okay, so you're never actually going to get an apology, but what most survivors want is just recognition of what they did. You know, because the hope that maybe they won't do that again. If they just realize what they did, how much harm they caused, then maybe they won't do it again. And you're never going to get that. You're not going to get a sorry, and you're definitely not going to get a here's what I understood what I did. And if it is, don't trust it. If you get, I'm not saying people can't change and that they can't learn lessons and all that stuff. But what I'm saying that it is like a relationship that was so harmful to you, chances are that person has so much to deal with and learn, and what work to do on themselves, that you will never see the fruits of your labor of trying to teach them what was wrong, what they did. You're not a teacher. You're not even getting paid to be men's teachers, okay? We're not being paid to be their moms. We're not being paid to be their teachers. Literally, like, they can learn these lessons on their own. And if anything, especially if it's someone who is really, really, you know, I hate that word, using it so much, but if they're abusive, or, you know, a homosexual, or any of these things, or narcissist, or whatever, anything you do to try to teach them a lesson is going to just arm them with more ways to manipulate other women. How to like just adapt, because they know that you like realize this stuff about them, right? So don't teach them. Don't go for closure. They will weaponize your hope. I love hope. Hope is a good thing. Hope is the only reason why, no matter what's going on in my life or in the world, I keep going, right? I need hope, but not hope in the wrong things. Don't have hope in men. Like, in general, don't give them the benefit of the doubt, and don't have hope in them unless you have lots of evidence proving that they are literally changing. But, you know, have hope with a lot of discretion. But most of these men are weaponizing our hope and our need for validation, our need for an apology, our need for just admitting what they did was wrong. But you're not their teacher. They're never going to pass that test. And even if they do, it is not worth it. And like I said in my last video, I don't ever want to see my ex again. If he ever realized what he did wrong, which he won't. There's so many bodies before me and after me that this man is like, I saw at some time. I like to think most people are, you know, capable of change and growth. We all are growing and learning and changing here. That's hopefully. But some people are so far gone. I believe my ex is one of them. I don't ever want to hear from this man again. Never. I don't care if he ever realizes what he did wrong. I don't ever want to hear from him again. And I did get like a surrogate apology from someone else. I'm going to go into that in a minute. But I also want to get into a different way that I healed and got closure that I wasn't even expecting. And this is what I think a lot of women are realizing, is because so many women have been harmed by men's cheating, by their, you know, by financial abuse, domestic violence, whatever, all of these different things, right? You know where you can get healing? With their other victims. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to reach out to them. But let me just tell you a story that happened to me. My ex, the little hobo, you know, anyone new here, literally was a hobo. Literally like rode the rails, you know. I found out later on he brushed his teeth with his finger, and I caught him eating dog bones. Like, we're talking like, you know, love is blind. Limerence is blind, okay? Trauma responses are blind. Love is not. And that video is coming on that awful show. Anyway, but I fell into like the worst thing I've ever walked into, you know. There's other things have happened to me, but this is something I actually like fell into. And a lot of it was my codependency and unhealed trauma and delusion and ego, right? Like I learned what it was that set me up to go down that trail with him in terms of the things that I really needed to work on in myself. And I also learned a lot about all the tricks that he played on me that I didn't know were tricks. This is one reason why I talk about this, to help educate women. But after he had, like financially abused me, raped me multiple times, almost drove me over a cliff, stole my most precious items, including all my work from 10 years. Like just whatever, I can list all things. After he did all that, and I literally left the state of New Mexico to get away from him. I was already planning on moving at some point, but I literally had a friend, Annie, everyone needs an Annie, come down from Alaska to drive me out of the state, move me out of that state and make sure I got out of there, right? And right before I left, like the last month I was with him, there was a beautiful woman who kept coming into the pizza shop, worked in a pizza place. He was the cook, I was a waitress. And he worked right behind me, the little pizza window. So he stared at me all day. No man could talk to me. Like literally ordering pizzas from me that my job was to take people's orders. And every man who placed an order with me, he accused me of cheating with blah, 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 which again, anytime, anything men accuse you of, if they're like, accusations are confessions thing, this is like classic case. Always accuse me. I didn't cheat on this man. I should have, but I didn't. I didn't even think about cheating on him. I can barely handle him. I don't have time for someone else, Anyway, this beautiful woman kept coming in. And the way she looked at him made me think like, there's something going on. I just had that feeling. And then I forget, there was a series of other things, but I just knew there was something going on between them. And I only saw them, in a public environment, in the place we worked. So it's not like I caught them doing anything. There was just something about the way she looked at him that I was like, wait a second. She seems like hypnotized like I was or something. Like she looked at him the way I used to look at him before I realized he was a douche. And then, of course, I found out, this is like the last month or so, I was just so done with him. And I found out he had cheated on me multiple times. Found out he was soliciting schmegs on Craigslist, hundreds in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Colorado Springs, all over, looking for it and hundreds of miles away from women online. We literally had it right here. But like, it's not about schmegs. It's about power. It's about betraying. It's about getting away with stuff. It's about so many things. It's got nothing to do with schmeg. And so I knew that he'd already been cheating. Again, I was done. I was out of it. I was still mind forked, but I was like, knew I was getting out. So part of me didn't even care that he was flirting with this woman, but I was like, there's something about putting up with endless crap, losing so much money, so much time, so much from a man, and then, being like abused by him, and then like the last, and you're cheating on me too. Like something about that. And also this woman was gorgeous, way prettier than me, younger than me. I was like, how is he pulling her? How is he getting her? Like, and there's a little part of me that wanted to hate her. But there was a bigger part of me that knew he probably convinced her to fall for him the way he'd convinced me to fall for him, which was by lying about having a girlfriend until it's too late. By too late, I mean literally like I was like locked in. And again, this is the only time I've ever been the other woman, knowingly at least. But I didn't know I was the other woman until I had already been talking to him, flirting with him, and like started, like a connection. And then I found out about that not only did he have a girlfriend, he was living with her and her mom. Oh, but he was trying to get out and he was the victim and blah, blah, blah. They always like tell all these lies. So I'm not saying that I wasn't guilty at all. Of course I was. But whenever I never just assumed that the other woman is just as guilty as the man cheating, because usually there's a lot of lies. So anytime a man is with a woman and he's complaining to you, whether it's his wife or girlfriend, about her, blah, 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 he's lying. Don't ever believe men who are partnered with someone. And, it's all lies. It's all lies. Don't believe. Do not be the side dish because, this poor guy, he's trapped in this whatever. I kind of saw through it, but I kind of did it. This is the first man I ever dated. I was 36 years old. First man I ever really dated. Okay? Even though I was 36, I didn't have any dating experience. So it's another reason why I make my content is because there's so many red flags I didn't realize were red flags. I didn't realize how much men lie. I didn't know what to look for, which is why I talk about this so much. But Anyway, realizing that he totally convinced me to date him because he was good, because I didn't know about the girlfriend. And then when I finally did, he was like about to leave her. I was like, he probably did the same thing with her. So there's a part of me, like the logical side, that like I usually, I don't know, like I just kind of, always give the woman the benefit of the doubt, never the man. But I was hurt, and I didn't want anything to do with this woman. Okay, now I never, talked to her one-on-one. We never had an interaction. I just felt like something was going on between them. But again, I had found in his phone that he'd been cheating with multiple women, doing the Craigslist ads, like all this horrifying stuff. And so I was like, well, what's one other one? I really didn't care all that much, right? So cut to like 2 months later, 2 months after I left, maybe not even 2 months after I left New Mexico, I was in LA trying to start over my new life, whatever. And I was still so traumatized from this relationship. But at least I'd gotten to the point where I'd cut him off. It took me a while to like block him, even though I literally ran away from him, terrified for my life, and had a whole team, a whole village of people getting me safely out. I still was checking his Facebook, seeing what's happening, listening to his long, crazy rants on my voicemails. Like I just couldn't cut him off yet. I was still, and part of me really missed the delusion of him, who I thought he was, the real guy, who he never was that guy to begin with. And then out of nowhere, I got a friend request from that woman who I'd had a feeling about. And I almost didn't accept that friend request because I was like, oh, this man wants to be friends with me? No, thank you. Then again, I had already reached out to one of his exes who I had found out, I like broke into his phone one night and saw that he'd been messaging a bunch of women. And so I wrote down their names, and then I found them in my Facebook and sent a message to one of them. And I was like, hey, I saw a bunch of messages from you, between you and I was like, just want to know, it seems like, I'm guessing you dated him at one point in time. I hope this isn't weird, but I'm leaving him right now. This is the message that made me realize I just evaded death somehow. Because when I asked her, should I be scared? Is he going to come find me? Like, it seems like y'all were dated. Is this somebody I should be concerned about? And she just wrote me back very simply, oh yeah, the last time I saw him was like 6 years ago. And he left me for dead on the railroad tracks with strangulation marks around my neck. And the police carried him away. Yeah, he will never leave you alone. He's still contacting me. And I was like, oh my God. I just thought, like I knew what he almost did to me, but I didn't really think he was capable of that. Even though he almost did it to me, I still was in a lot of denial. And so because I'd had this positive exchange with one of his exes, realizing, oh man, like the exes of this man, we're on the same team. We're not competitors, right? So the fact that this woman who he'd been flirting with, that I had that feeling from, friend requested me, I didn't want to take it. My ego didn't want to accept that friend request. It's just like, right? But the wiser part of me and the girl's girl part of me was like, I don't know. I kind of feel like she's somebody I should be in contact with, right? So I accepted her friend request. This was so long ago, y'all. Ugh. She sent me a message and she said, hey, I hope it's not weird that I'm reaching out, but I think that you used to date so-and-so. And I was just wondering, like how scared I should be, because he seems like an egomaniacal, like crazy man who faked his own death or something like that. I'd have to go back and read it. And I was like, oh my God, he did the same thing to me. So I responded and I was like, it was really hard for me to accept this friend request because I'm pretty sure that he was cheating with you while he was with me, but I guess he did end up dating you. By the way, we were together until such and such date. So I'm not sure what your timeline is, but just so you know, like he was with me until October or whatever, such and such. And I was like, funny thing is he also faked his own death with me. You see, I have screenshots of this. About a month or so after I left, out of nowhere, I got I got text from a guy named Jake from a different number that I'd never heard of. This is after I blocked him on all of everything I could block him on. And Jake told me, let me know if you want to see the screenshots. I've shown them before, but they're really funny in a, like dark kind of way. Jake had a letter from my ex that he wanted to send me because my ex had hung himself from a tree with, but I'm not sure if he had the note around his neck that says, this is what happens when Melanie Hamlet loves you, like he had told me they would find one day, which hurt more, like the first person I ever loved, which is not love, is limerence. First person I ever fell in love with at 36 said that dating me is so awful that they're going to find a note around his neck that says, this is what happens when Melanie Hamlet loves you. You will want to take your own life. Even though I know this man's crazy and I didn't really trust anything he said, like that hurt. You're the first person you've ever loved, and he was nice, I thought, when I met him, and now he's psycho. Maybe this is what happens when Melanie Hamlet loves you. And so, I didn't ask if he had a note around his neck or whatever. But this guy, Jake, wanted to tell me, and I was like, oh my God. First of all, I was like, this kind of feels like it's the guy. Like this sounds like my ex. It's like no punctuation, like all over. It just sounds like him. It's lazy texting. And so I was like, so I started asking questions and pretending like I was concerned because I really didn't believe this man was dead. And then I asked them what they did with the body, and they're like, oh, friends found him. They buried it under the tree. And I was like, okay, this is definitely my ex. He's just literally he also told me he'd been shot in the stomach by a man who says, this is for Melanie. I have these screenshots too. Y'all want to see these screenshots? I will show them. I have them. They're hilarious. They're so bonkers. It's funny. So this man he's always been making up lies, like crazy lies. Anyway, I realized this is him. Then I was like, no, thanks. I don't want the letter. Basically, this man wanted my address. Whether he was going to mail me a letter or come and just, I don't know. But I was like, no, thanks, bye. And then I blocked that number too. And so to hear this woman asking me about this man that I had dated that apparently she dated right after me, or actually, wow, crossover, he faked his own death too. He faked his own death. When I told her, I was like, I didn't really want to be, my ego did not want to accept this friend request. But the wiser, more evolved part of me, who also is empathetic, believes that you probably went through the ringer with this dude too. And it sounds like he also did literally the same tricks. Same thing. Sent her the same note from Jake. Like this man, which is funny because by like pretending to die, he couldn't contact me anymore without breaking the story. Although he did end up contacting her again later on. Like, wait, I thought you hung yourself from a tree. Anyway, the point of this story is that from that moment she reached out to me, her and I were looking out for each other. Anytime that she got weird text from somebody or whatever, like anytime anything was happening, we would reach out to each other and make sure we're okay. Make sure like neither one of us needs to be concerned, because she was still in New Mexico. Even though I left. Like, we've been looking out for each other. We actually became, like, I actually coached her in writing later on. She was in some of my workshops. Like, we don't live in the same state, and I don't know if we'll ever meet face to face. But we have, like, a friendship on some level. We care for each other. We look out for each other. We both survived this man. And that has given me more closure than ever seeing this man again ever could. Ever. And that is one way that I think you actually can get closure. I'm not saying go and, contact the exes of any man who's ever abused you. But what I am saying is a lot of times they purposely pit us against each other. They lie about all this stuff. And, and then, I got picked. And then, of course, he does it again with another pick me. And it's like we're all like bandaged and bruised and just like all like barely hanging on because of this one man, like a tornado through our lives. And us all having that in common and helping each other survive that and feel less crazy and stupid. Like, I felt less stupid hearing her story. And the reason for that is because when she was telling me all these details about how, she'd been tricked, I didn't judge her at all. I was like, oh man. And when I started realizing that this woman, the way I'm able to empathize with her, to help her not feel so silly and stupid and ignorant and just like a fool for believing these crazy lies this man said. By extending that to her, I was extending it to myself. I couldn't help but feel empathy for didn't know better Melanie by saying those things to her. It was this beautiful moment where she mirrored back to me what I needed for me to forgive myself. And it was so beautiful. And then another story is that when I told this story on the Risk podcast, it was like an hour-long version of this story. A man reached out to me, or he wrote on my, I don't know if it was an email or wrote a comment or something. And he said, basically sent me a long message saying thank you so much for your story. Because I first of all, I had untreated bipolar for a really long time. Second of all, just a lot of issues I never dealt with. And even though I was never physically abusive, I was absolutely verbally and emotionally abusive to my ex. And I can never apologize to her because I don't think that would help her. I don't think she wants to ever see me again. But I'm having a really hard time moving on because I'm so consumed with shame and being a monster. And the way you told your story was so much empathy and humanity, and refusing to call men who abuse women monsters because, there's so many of them, they're all on the monster spectrum, I guess. But just the way I told that story, which again, I would actually tell that story different now than I did 5 or however many years ago that was. Oh, it was more than 5, 7 or 8 years ago. I think I would tell that story differently. But I'm so proud of the way I told that story, which was basically trying to make people understand why women fall for men like this. Because these are men in our community. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Some of your favorite men in your life are abusers. You just don't know it. You don't know what they're doing behind closed doors. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to take the shame away from women to fall for men like this, because a lot of times we just see these certain parts of their personality and we're like, oh, they're so empathetic and nurturing. This man used to wash my hair and cook for me and do all these things. And I was like, oh, wow, never thought a man could do that. Of course, he stopped as soon as we started dating. And instead of, washing my hair in the shower, he was peeing on me in the shower. That's a thing with narcissists, by the way. I learned that on TikTok. Instead of making me nutritious meals, he started making me food to intentionally get me to gain weight. He literally said, I'm going to fatten you up so no other man will want you. Okay? So all these things that have been green flags in the beginning turned into horrifying red flags. And so when I told that story on the podcast, again, I would tell it differently now, but I'm proud of the way I told it. I am. I'm proud of the way I told it. And this man, he was like, look, I'm not looking for forgiveness from anybody, but I really, in order for me to show up as a human being and I'm just consumed with shame. And I know I need to get over this because it's not helpful to anybody. And I just want you to know, thank you so much. This story really changed my life and helped me realize just how harmful some of my behavior was, just how much the impact was, and how much work I still have to do. And how, I don't know. And he's like, I've been medicated ever since I got out of that relationship because it scared me who I became. And he's like, I'm not blaming it on bipolar, but I had all these issues I wasn't dealing with. And I'm not here to accept an apology on behalf of his ex. And I'm not here to minimize his behavior or the harm he caused. All I am saying is that I never, ever, 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 ever want to see the face of my ex again, hear his voice. I never want contact with him again. And in this really weird way, me talking about my abuse and the way I talked about it helped me almost get an apology through another abuser, if that makes sense. I know this sounds so crazy, but seeing that there was somebody who desperately was trying to change. And the reason why, the things that he said made me think he actually was changing. One of them being I'll never contact my ex again. I think that would be traumatizing for her. I don't think it would be helpful. I know that she probably wouldn't even believe me. Because whatever, she doesn't get anything out of me apologizing to her. And I think leaving her alone is the best thing I can do. That we don't even want to hear apology, which goes back to my original point. You do not need an apology from your abuser. You do not need him to admit that what he did was wrong. He probably will never realize what he did to you. Or maybe he does and doesn't care. And that's even worse. I would just rather not know. I don't want to know anything about how my ex is processing this or not processing this or anything he's doing. I don't want to know anything about him. I want him out of my mind, out of my life forever. I don't need anything from this man. I don't live with any anger at him. The hardest part was for me to forgive myself. And that's what I got from this odd connection that I ended up having with his next victim. And again, that's why I think we're in a moment now where so many women are realizing that we are not each other's enemies. I am not saying some women, yeah, they are absolutely out to harm other women. But usually it's to get to men or for the approval of men or something, not always. But what I am saying is that a lot of women who are trying to heal still hold out hope that one day they'll get that apology. You won't. And if you do, it's probably a bad thing. You don't want that apology. You don't need that apology. You don't need that closure. It comes from in here, and it comes from your community, and it comes in these weird ways. Like literally, how did the woman that my ex cheated on me with give me closure? Like that was not on my bingo card. My trauma had to recover from a trauma bingo card. And yet she did. And we both realized that we were just fooled. And then we both were, reliving stuff from our past in that relationship. And we both got help. And this awful man somehow brought us together. It's like, I'm not like silver lining is that I found my friend. But I do try to think of like, well, all this crazy stuff, anything that came from it that was positive, I'll take that. I'll take it, right? So if you are fresh out of a relationship that was traumatizing for you, or not even fresh out of it, even this was like 2-3 years ago, 5 years ago, and you just have this like belief that one day he'll try to win you back, and then you'll be like, no, or one day he'll apologize and you'll get to say, I don't forgive you, or I do forgive you, and y'all hug him, make up, and whatever your fantasy is, that is what's holding you back. And like I said earlier, the one thing that all survivors tend to have in common, and this is what one of my mentors who was a survivor said in the room, that the person leading the group at this, support group said, the one thing you all have in common is this desperate need for this person to admit they were wrong and maybe even apologize. You will never get that. And as long as you need that, you will not heal. She was right. She's right about that. As long as I need something from this man, an apology, for him to come back, for him to even admit he was wrong, I am still linked to him and not to myself. So I need to, let go of that delusion. Because be careful what you wish for. When and if they do come back, it is usually not good. It is not good for you. It's dangerous, usually. But also it's going to, if they come back and say sorry, you're going to fall for it all over again, probably. I know you think you won't, but you probably will. And the best thing that man can do is never contact you again. But you can't control what he does. But what you can do is block him on all things so that you don't have that moment of weakness where you're like, maybe I'm getting my apology now. Don't. Cut him off. You don't need him to heal. You don't need closure from him. You need it from inside, and then you'll get it in these beautiful, surprising ways that you never even thought you would need. So don't call him. Don't text him. Don't give him access to you. Him, her, they, whoever it is. Whoever it is that may have harmed you, that you fantasize about just this moment, you would just move on if, fill in the blank, you're not going to get it. And that very thing you need is what's holding you back. I don't know. This was like all over the place. I hope this was helpful. Let me know. Please join my Patreon. I have my live with one of the lawyers who took down Larry Nassar on Thursday. And so much cool stuff happening on Patreon. And let me know if you heard the comments song.
Welcome to the Comment Song, the place where I tell weird stories. Welcome to the Comment Song, where I show you some stuff I'm doing. This was me yesterday at a Roman Empire thingy. I don't know. It's kind of like a Renaissance fair, but not really. This happened at an amphitheater here in Lyon, where they actually used to do this stuff for real. Seriously, for real, right here. These are literally Roman ruins. But when they conquer the French. Anyway, this is the Comet Song. If you join my Patreon, you'll see stuff like this over there. I'm gonna do a video pretty soon, but I'm really sick today, so I don't have a whole lot of energy. And I'm trying to save myself for my big live on Thursday with the lawyer. Anyway, the Comet Song is ending now. Type your comment. Na. This was the weirdest thing. They literally had a thumbs up, thumbs down about whether they were going to kill a gladiator or not. Anyway, more on that later over on Patreon. Bye. Let me know if you heard this.